Have you heard that Jason Kidd just got fired? Do you want to know why? Who should replace him? The only question left is, say it with me, you win. Hey sports fans, Coach Nick here, and welcome to the B-Ball Breakdown podcast / live show / emergency podcast. Welcome everybody, glad you could be here. Let's talk Jason Kidd, let's talk the Bucks firing. Woj bomb, big one today. What are your thoughts, Dave?
Well, so I tweeted out this morning, so Woj dropped the Kawhi Leonard isn't happy story this morning. And I said, hey, don't worry, we'll have something to talk about this evening. I assumed we'd be talking about more Cleveland stuff.
Wait, but how did you connect those two? Why did the Kawhi bomb become something that you know we can hear about something else?
Because it's a non-story. It's not a real story. I mean, I'm sure that it's true because the people reporting it, Woj, Zach Lowe, and Mike Wright, are very good at their jobs. So I'm sure that it's a thing. But Kawhi's not getting traded. They will work it out. It's fine. But I did not expect the Jason Kidd getting fired. And I'm not even meaning to smile. It's just such a big – I don't know. This was a shock. We both assumed that he was going to stick around at least through the season. He's got the relationship with the ownership there. He worked his way into a little bit more of a position of power within the organization, was kind of getting his way, despite having a team that is ranked 25th in defense and 12th in offense with a bona fide top 5 player in Giannis Antetokounmpo, and a guy who, if they were winning more games, would rightfully be in the top tier of MVP discussion talks. But they're 23-22, now 8th in the Eastern Conference. And, he made this statement last year where he said, we can no longer use the excuse that we're a young team.
Right.
He said that they were a young team last year, and now this year they're no longer a young team. They're not really young and they're not really old. They're sort of in this in-between sweet spot that you want to be in. And you and I have talked all year about how they actually have really great personnel for the modern NBA. What's the problem?
Okay. It's funny because I wish I had pushed back harder on this notion of whether he get fired because I think my way of saying that he wasn't safe was that I would bring it up. And then we both you would say, well, he's got the relationship with the ownership. That's how he got the job in the first place. And I would kind of be like, yeah. But I think subconsciously what I was saying was, no, he is not safe. And they're going to look at this because, remember, they're business people. They look at the bottom line. They look at the communication. They look at the leadership. And but here's the thing. Let's get to the nuts and bolts of the X's and O's. And this is a rehashing in theory of what we've been talking about for the last however long. But a couple things. Yeah, they're ranked almost last in defense, and their pick and roll defense is terrible. They consistently hedge high, and they consistently try and double team in this way that they used to do this back in the 90s when Jason Kidd played, although he did play, even more recently. But it's weird because his coaching style seems rooted in when he first got in the league. It's probably worth looking at who he played for and whatever, but even Carlisle, you would think, Carlisle might be a little bit in the old school too. So at any rate, so that was a real problem, and they were getting killed on the pick and roll defense. I'm going to call up the synergy in a second and look at their ranking, but it's got to be low on that as well. So that was a big one. Now, just remind me or remind everybody else when we're talking about what our issues were with the offense.
Well, so they are it's the only team in the league that can have 4 shooters on the court and no space. Bingo. That's my big problem. Also, it seems like when they find an action that they like, an action that works, they just hammered that action constantly. Like right now or recently it was the Hawk set. Previously it's been the horns, but running it off the wing. It's repetitive. And in the NBA, you are not going to have a top tier offense. I mean, how they're ranked 12th, I'll never know. I mean, I'll put that firmly on Giannis, and that's the only reason. But it's insane to me that in 2018, you can have a team that will just continuously run the same thing over and over and over and over. It's just too easy. I mean, guys are too smart, man. They watch way too much film. They know what's coming. You have to mix things up. This is why the best offensive teams in the league don't have sets. They run stuff out of everything. You know, you can get a split cut out of what is a normal triangle setup or out of horns or whatever. And so they make plays rather than run plays, if that makes sense. I mean,
right.
You know this stuff.
And by the way, there's nothing wrong with when you have a set that works and you can run it, but there needs to be a little bit more of a progression. And I feel like this team never really got the next progression over. They kept trying to run the same one over and over again. And yeah, it became a problem where there wasn't a lot of space for Giannis. And I've done a video last year. I'm going to do a video today, tomorrow, as soon as I can. I got the Cavs to deal with as well. I'm knee deep in Cavs footage, but maybe I'll drop that and do the Milwaukee stuff first. But where we would show them where they just don't get Giannis in great positions to score, and he still scores. I mean, that's the thing. He still has an All-Star year. He still has a MVP year, but the offense, and we've heard this before from like Phil Jackson, is they don't run offense for Giannis or for the stars. They run it for the other guys. And it's those guys that not only get more touches and get better shots and more rhythm, but then that gives them more energy on the other end when they need to play. But like we said, defensively, by the way, it's just been a mess, enough of a mess where there's just no excuse for how they should for that. They should be a lot better defensively, and it's really the underlying fundamental way they played it. And every game that it got closer to 500 was when we thought that kid was going to get fired.
Real quick, before we go full in on the defense, just the offense, just an example. I never saw Malcolm Brogdon set a back screen for Giannis, but I swear I've seen 50 Giannis back screens for Malcolm Brogdon, typically for a lob from Delhi. The back screener should be a guy who can pop and shoot.
Right.
And they just didn't do any of that kind of stuff, and it was so simplistic and again repetitive. But to the defensive front, when you've got this sort of personnel, I mean, Tony Snell, Chris Middleton, Malcolm Brogdon, Giannis Antetokounmpo, John Henson. I mean, these are not garbage defensive players by any stretch of the imagination. And yet they have the 25th ranked defense.
Right.
I mean, you could just play straight up old school pick and roll coverage with this personnel, and you'd at least be middle of the pack.
Right. You know what's funny was I just started looking at the numbers here to see what their rating were over the last 5 games, because when the firing idea happens, it's probably 5 games ago. Maybe it's the beginning of the year and they're looking at it, but it's something usually turns over the last few games, right? And they're finally I had enough, we can't take it. Do you want to guess what their offensive rating was the last 5 games?
No, just tell me.
The last 10 games, it was 22nd. The last 5 games, it was 29th. So you can't tell me that Lazarus aren't looking at this, right, and sort of tracking this. Now, what I really want to do really quickly as we're talking is grab the schedule and the results to see, let's say the last 5 games, who they played, why they were so poor on offense. And they lost. They actually won 1 of the 5. But so they played the Warriors, okay. They played the Heat, and they scored 79 points, okay. They played the Wizards, and they beat them, okay. They played a Heat again, and then the Sixers, and they lost to the Sixers. And that's got to be, they got blown out by the Sixers in their last game, if I'm looking at this correctly, right? Which on Saturday.
Here, let me ask you a question. Just we know that firing your coach mid-season is a terrible indicator for your future success. I mean, or it's a good indicator that you're not going to succeed, at least short term.
Don't ask the Cavs that though.
Well, but the Cavs aside, come on, they don't have LeBron. All right. The Bucks are currently 1 game ahead of the Pistons for the final spot in the playoffs. I mean, we're not close to playoff time yet, but bear with me on this. The Sixers and Pacers are just ahead of the Bucks. Is there a scenario where you see the Bucks just missing the playoffs completely? It's in play, right? I'm not crazy to think that they could very much miss the playoffs.
The question is, do they want to miss the playoffs at this point? And there's no question. I mean, here's the thing with the bottom of the East anyway, right? Even though they're in 8th place, they're a game ahead of Detroit right now, who's in 9th. There are 3 games ahead of the Knicks, which is another surprising one. So, they're only a half game out of 7th either way, and 1 game out of 6th. So they're right in the middle of this whole thing. But, yeah, it's a teeter-totter situation here where they could go either way. But I can tell you this, based on what we just talked about, if anybody gets in there in charge and adjusts 2 different things, only 2, one thing on offense and one thing on defense, they get the 6th or 5th seed. You know what I mean? They get the 6th seed easy.
You and I have talked about this personnel, and it's almost my dream personnel. Like if Giannis had a deep three, that he could hit 35%. Okay, but I love how switchy this lineup can be. This roster can be. They haven't gotten Jabari back, so I mean that's some extra offensive punch that at least theoretically they'll have. Mm-hmm. This will be a highly coveted job by coaches come this summer. Already people are saying Fizdale. You and I have talked about Fizz. I think Fizz, what he was doing in Memphis was kind of great. He was bringing in some of that Heat culture. We're both a little skeptical about, what is he bringing to the table as a coach, because we didn't really get to see it. Not skeptical. Skeptical sounds like it's a negative. We just didn't get to see much in Memphis.
Right. Well, here, let me throw this out there about Fizdale, because there's an interesting connection to the Bucks' job. Because Fizdale, in theory, would be a good coach. He seems to have a good grasp of the X's and O's and all that stuff. He decided to motivate Marc Gasol by being really hard on him. He thought this was going to make him tougher and all that kind of stuff, old school mentality. And it totally backfired. And I think that Marc had, if not say, they certainly probably asked him whether or not he should remain. I'm sure he wasn't, completely warm with his fuzzy feelings with Fizdale. Well, they now have another European star on this team who wasn't raised in America, who may or may not respond to that kind of coaching, positively or negatively not. Now, does Fizdale learn
KIDD
from
gave
this
him
experience?
some tough love.
What?
KIDD gave him some tough love.
Who?
And Giannis. And Giannis actually responded well to it. KIDD gave him some tough love.
Okay.
Benched him a couple times early. And by the way, I don't know if you saw this. ESPN's Chris Herring was reporting that as of the Woj bomb being released, Jason Kidd had not been made aware that he was fired, and Giannis was pretty upset about it. So there's more. We're going to hear more stuff.
Yeah. Well, that's
There's
interesting.
More
So
to the story.
The implication here, I was going to ask you if you had. I haven't even read the Wojbomb article because I was so busy getting prepped for this. But I wanted to ask you if you read the article. Did it mention anything about Giannis and maybe him knowing? And it sounds like what you're telling me is he didn't know. He didn't know.
I just got a tweet. I didn't get it. There's no article yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, all right. And by the way, it's hard to know how genuine that reaction is. Is he or not? But I would think that most of the time you'd feel like, yeah, it is a thing where, if he's genuinely surprised, the reporter is going to feel that and report that accurately. Interesting that they didn't consult with him, because I would have thought he would have at least been asked a little bit about how things are going. By the way, they might have done that, and his answer could have floated out there, and then he didn't realize that what the implication was.
That's true. I mean, look, I think that most players are going to have a decent relationship with their coach. Most of them will. Yeah. And asking them anything after a guy gets fired or something like that. I mean, I don't think you're ever going to get a really eloquent response. I mean, this was like LeBron the other night, and people trying to make a big deal out of when they asked if he thought Ty Lue was going to get fired. First of all, I get it. It's your job. You've got to ask those questions, but. I mean, you put the player in a really tough spot,
right?
Especially a guy like LeBron. What is he going to say? There's
the canned answer that you're supposed to say.
Sure,
right?
But and then we would hammer him if he just gave a canned response, and then he gives an honest response with "I don't know." You know what I mean? And this was right after a loss. I just think. I don't know. It's kind of tricky with some of these things. Right.
By the way, Lue could very well be next. He is without question on the hottest seat of them all. And he's been on the hottest seat of them all since he took the job. I don't even think that's a shocker anyway. So, but the KIDD thing was interesting. I'm remembering now earlier this year, and not that long ago, someone had sent it over. I missed it. But at the end of the game, we talked about it maybe, up by 4, and he had them miss the free throw on purpose.
Yeah.
Is that the right scenario?
Yes.
And it it made no sense. There was a second and a half left, and he thought it'd be better if the clock ran out. Oh no, it had to be up by 3, wasn't it? It's something like where they could have actually it could have backfired on them horribly. Anybody out there remind me exactly what the situation was? And I looked at it. I actually watched it to see what was going on there because it was concerning. And those are the things where it's like, yikes! You don't want to get stuck publicly with that kind of thing, out there being kind of dumb, X's and O's wise.
Yeah, they were up 3 and fouled, or up 3 and
missed the first free throw.
No, up 3 and had them. Yeah, we're mixing up a couple of mess ups. Let's just put it that way. There have been multiple.
Okay.
But I will say this. One of the, as we sort of, I'm not eulogizing Coach Kidd's career because I don't think he's going to be done. I think someone will hire him again. There's a couple of things that I will point out that I really like about Jason Kidd as a coach. Number one, he was willing to try new things. And I think that, in our culture in general, in our society in general, those people are few and far between. And I mean, remember playing Paul Pierce at the 4 when he was with the Nets. That was Jason Kidd. There were a lot of interesting things that he did, and I think that this gets lost quite a bit. It's hard to do new things. It's really hard. Playing Draymond Green at the 5, right, for the Warriors, like people thought it was unsustainable. Okay. So I just think that is to me, that's one of his good attributes. The bad thing is I think he was too good of a player to wind up being a good coach because he was so special from an IQ standpoint. Like I think that you could tell Jason Kidd, hey, this is what needs to happen. Just go do this. And he could go do it. And a lot of guys, it takes drill and it takes practice and all these other things. Right. The other thing is one of the most underrated, and we all make fun of it, but man, what a brilliant coaching move was when he had who ran into him.
Oh, right.
When he called,
they needed a
stoppage. I think listen, man, like if you're not cheating, you're not trying. And I think that's a great play. We give Carlisle credit for calling timeouts and taking a technical when he's out of timeouts to teach his rookies. I mean, to me, it's not that much different. They're both breaking the rules, but Jason Kidd was just finding a way to break the rules to actually benefit his team.
Yeah.
So
I have a memory, by the way, of that, looking at it and going, well, why didn't they have any more timeouts left? And I felt like I was like,
hey, you're missing the forest for the trees.
I think it's the other way around, really.
I'm jealous. I'm jealous that I didn't think of it. It's a genius move, and I loved it. I think that it's definitely funny, but also like that's just the sort of heads up IQ thing. I mean, remember, he ran into he ran into Mike Woodson to draw a technical
as a player?
Mike Woodson was on the court. Yeah. So I'm just saying, like Jason Kidd, as far as basketball IQ, is up there with like the LeBron Jameses in the history of basketball. And I don't know if that necessarily is going to equal being a good coach because he gets it and not everyone's going to get it on the same level that he does.
It's funny because
that's a long-winded thing.
Yeah, but like I'm not so sure he like quote unquote got it. Based on like the offense, for instance. I mean, he played in the Princeton offense and had his best until he won the title with Dallas, like had his most success. And yet, like there's a lot of clever action and movement that we never really saw much. I mean, if you want to talk about their offense, it was the high post split. Dribble the ball to the wing, throw it to the elbow, and then you screen the guy in the corner and they cut off of it, and that's about it. And then after that, let's run a pick and roll if you don't get anything. Now, they would have some progressions out of that, but other than that, it was rare to see much else. Maybe a floppy here and there for Middleton or maybe a post-up for Middleton. But again, it didn't have the kind of motion. Now, for a while there, it didn't matter. I feel like we were criticizing the offense, and it was still ranked like 11th, right, or 12th. Mm-hmm. Isn't that what it was for most of the year?
Yeah, it's 12th now.
It's 12th now, right. So it's always around that area. So it was almost like, well, sheesh, how can we criticize that? But it definitely felt like they were holding the team back on that end. And then, again, we can go back ad nauseum about how they guarded the pick and rolls. And I bet you once I dig into the footage, I'll see more stuff that it was troubling as well, as far as basic root fundamental defense. And that's a problem. It's, just one of those things. Now, the real question, again, like we mentioned, is what is the intention of the Bucks at this point? Are they trying to right the ship, or are they trying to go get another great player in the draft?
Well, so Woj had a follow-up tweet, and he said that it essentially came down to them dropping to the 8th seed and trying to right the ship, and also Jason Kidd had apparently frayed some relationships within the organization. So I think that this is a sort of a layered firing. I think that it is both about the on-court, about this season in general, but also about the future. I mean, if you're the Bucks, you cannot just concentrate on what's going to happen in the next 3 months. You have to think about next year and the year beyond that. I mean, the clock is ticking on Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Absolutely, it is right, and that's the other problem. So, what do they have their first round pick? Do we know that for sure? The Bucks.
Let me see.
You want me to vamp while you do that? Because we also have to see if they have anybody else's pick. I can't remember off the top of my head what their deal is, but are you looking it up?
I am. I'm pulling it up right now.
So hey, let's go to a question from our site, our comments, if we have anything here. Let's see here. Jesnick says Jason Kidd had to go, and that is, I agree. For some reason, I don't know why I couldn't put my finger on it, but people kept trying to ask me, like, should he get fired? Should he get fired on Twitter? And for some reason, with that specific situation, I kind of felt weird about just sort of calling it out for some reason, even though I would normally not. I don't know what that's about. Maybe I kind of feel like maybe the Bucks management is on Twitter and they might see it and that might make me feel guilty. I don't know. I can't explain.
I mean, there's people. I mean, we know people with the Bucks that frequent Twitter, but also I never want to call for anyone to get fired. I don't want anyone to lose their job. I mean, I don't care who it is.
Right.
I mean, unless they've done something morally reprehensible. And Jason Kidd, I mean, he wasn't a good coach, but at the same time, there was a lot of reason to believe that he could be at some point.
Right.
So back to the picks. Milwaukee, they have their pick if it falls between 11 and 16 this year.
Yikes! So they don't even have a lottery
have their
pick,
first round pick. No, it would have to be late lottery if they got it.
I mean, anything after 10, I don't count as a lottery.
Yeah, they owe it to Phoenix.
All right. So. Wow, that's brutal. That's the Bledsoe trade.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. We actually have a good question by Logan J. Samp, or whatever. What good does a midseason firing do when you stick with the same staff for the rest of the year? And this is a really good question. I think that you're you don't know what to do because you're not going to hire a new staff now anyway, right? I think that's the problem.
Yeah, I mean, there is something to be said for having some continuity if you're still trying to make a playoff push.
Yeah.
They're not going to bring in a new coach until the summer.
Right.
I mean, unless something really weird happens. I just think that for a team, usually these higher profile teams, and I mean higher profile meaning they actually have talented players, they normally wait until the summer to bring a new guy in.
Well, you can't bring. I mean, there's no choice. There's no other guy. I mean, unless you want to say Fizdale, who's sitting in the wings,
or maybe Blatt.
Yeah, wow, that's interesting. Let's get into that discussion right now as we start to wrap up. Who should they bring in and who's available? I mean, Fizdale is obviously the guy that comes to mind right away. Who deserves another? He deserves another chance either way.
Right.
I think that's the key,
and he will, and he'll get one.
Yeah.
I mean, he's got a lot of the buzz right now because Memphis really screwed up by letting him go.
Right. But the other thing
I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know enough about what Fizdale does as a coach, aside from Memphis, to know whether he's a good fit for the Bucks personnel. I'm imagining that he would be because he's a good coach and a modern coach, so I'm sure he would have them doing good stuff, right? But I wonder if could the Bucks be the team to get Jeff Van Gundy out of the broadcast booth? He's really been enjoying. I know he's enjoying coaching the USA basketball stuff, so that might be enough for him. I've seen a lot of people throw Mark Jackson out there. Mark Jackson's not getting another coaching job anytime soon. We'll leave it at that. And someone threw out Vinny Del Negro.
Well, by the way, if you want to stick with Mark Jackson just on the X's and O's side, it's probably going to be a problem for him. And then there's a whole other discussion about him as well. So Vinny Del Negro, I think his chip is passed.
I don't know, man. I think that Vinny is good for a young team. Like he did a really good job with the Bulls and with the Clippers, developing their young talent and really getting them along. But I don't know if he's right for the team that's sort of like a playoff team looking to take the next step.
He's not.
Jerry Stackhouse is another name I've seen a couple times today. I think Jerry Stackhouse is going to wind up being a really good coach if his G League stuff is any indication.
Yeah.
But I don't know if this is the kind of job you want a first-time coach.
No, I agree.
Right?
I agree. I don't think a first-time coach would work. I don't think Stackhouse would be – again, the expectations are so high right now that you need somebody. I'm actually very intrigued by Blatt. Here's the other thing, though, is we're talking about coaches who don't have an NBA job right now, but the precedent has been set. Like they might go after a guy who's got a job. Look at how Jason Kidd got there. He was already the Nets coach. Oh, and by the way, they didn't tell, as far as I remember, they didn't tell Larry Drew that he was fired either, right? Right? There was some weird stuff going on there where he got stuck in the middle there, and then ended up losing his job to Jason Kidd.
The Bucks have had some weird stuff happening with ownership in the front office, and remember they had this super long search for a GM over the summer. They lost Justin Zanuck, who was sort of the GM in waiting. That's funny. I forgot about that. Well, you bring up trading for a coach. There's a coach out in L.A. who is going to be in his final year next year. I wonder,
you gotta be kidding
could we hear
me.
Doc Rivers' name this summer if he leaves the Clippers?
Could that be a
possibility?
That if I were Doc and I could wrangle that, I'd be doing that. In fact, Doc might even be talking to him right now. I mean, yes, that would be an interesting thing. Although I got to tell you that the Clippers they're still hanging around. They're still
Doc's doing a great job. Doc's doing a really great job this year.
I got to tip my cap to somebody over there, and I guess it's got to be Doc because certainly the revolving door of injuries and whatever.
Hang on, I have an outside the box idea that just popped in my head, and I don't want to lose it. And I hate to interrupt you like this.
No, do it.
Okay. So during the GM search, the Bucks were very interested in Becky Hammons from the Spurs.
Oh.
I wonder if that's a name we're going to hear.
Yeah.
I wonder if that's a name we're going to hear.
Wow. The first female head coach in the NBA is going to be in Milwaukee.
It would be splashy. She's very good. She's well respected. Oh.
Listen, we could shift that conversation just by you saying it, that it could be out there now.
Yeah.
You know what's funny? I mean, it reminds me of all right, this is going to sound like I'm trying to take a lot of credit, but like I was at the Combine in 2014 in Chicago, right when they were about to hire either Kerr or they were trying to get Kerr to the Knicks, right? And on the plane ride to Chicago, it came out, Steve Kerr took the job in Golden State, and now the Knicks were scrambling. And I started talking about, well, if you want to run a triangle, and you want a guy that knows it better than anybody, well, he's in the gym right over there was Scottie Pippen. And I mentioned that to somebody, and the next thing you know, it was like being reported. It was crazy. So you never know. You might have just scooped the Becky Hammon possibility going to the Milwaukee Bucks.
I just tweeted it out too, so we can follow it if it grows. But that's just something that popped in my head when I mentioned the GM search, because they were very interested in that. It's a progressive ownership group, and they're definitely looking to make a splash. And
we got a good question here. Bishman03 asks, could the Bucks be the next Warriors with new coach taking them to new heights? I think not right now, but I think that if Jabari Parker comes back and does anywhere near what I think he could do if he is healed, now you're talking about 7-8 deep of like good talent. The right coach there that gets them above what they need to be at now. Yeah, right, don't you think?
Yeah, I think that there's definitely some potential for that. It's funny, like how many times we see these teams that are stacked with talent, make a coaching change, and then it turns around. I mean, obviously the Warriors being like the biggest example of that, but we've seen this with other teams as well. It's not uncommon to get a new voice in the room and change things up, and not to mention the new coaching staff has some time to sort of sit and think about the current roster and come in with the right plan from day one. So. Yeah, that'd be interesting. I'd like to see it. I want the Bucks to be really good.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we've been waiting for them to be really good. When they had that one series with Mike Dunleavy out there for the Bulls, and they were competitive. That was the launching point. That was Kidd's first year, maybe second year. I think that's what in the greater context we were looking at is here they are. They didn't make the playoffs the next year. And they're still bumbling around in that same spot, like almost not making the playoffs and not being a threat. There was something there. They could have already been there. They should have already been above like Washington in my mind at this point. And I'm sure that's why the ownership has said, like, this is enough. We've given him, several seasons now. And when you see enough of those things that are head scratching and coaching wise, yeah, then you got to go. And again, I would believe at this point they're young in the sense that they're not going to give the players much say in the coaching change. So I'll be willing to say, yeah, I bet you they just made the change on their own. They probably didn't even take too much of the temperature of the team anyway. And here we are. Doc, also, did you mention that he has the Marquette connection too? I kind of forgot about that. It's been so long. But he went to Marquette from Chicago. So, another one of those reasons why. And by the way, we saw Doc kind of jump ship too from Boston, right? And kind of, like cheating on the wife with the girlfriend before they got divorced, kind of thing. And why not? Once, let me just say it this way: like a girlfriend I had in college, we started dating because she was cheating on her boyfriend, and I knew that, but never thought she'd do it with me. So let me tell you guys, they do it once, they'll do it again.
Yeah. I'm not going to touch that. A lot of people in the chat are saying that the Bucks should be a 3 to 5 seed. I think that's about where we had them pegged based on talent, and they definitely have underperformed. And so to just reiterate, I think that just for basketball reasons, leave the off-court stuff off. But just for basketball reasons, I think that this probably is even overdue. Yeah. And I hate to say that.
Absolutely. Well, what is overdue as well is a little bit of a sign-off here because I know you got to run to get to practice, and I got to get going on, I guess, this video. So great show, Dave. Really enlightening, and I think that there's cause for hope in Milwaukee. This is not one of those things where the season could end. They might have a scenario where they, like I said, tweak a couple things and get this thing up to 6th or 5th seed, and who knows what happens in the first round of the playoffs.
Will they make the playoffs? That's what I want to know from you right now. Gun to your head.
Yeah, I think they will.
Okay.
If they're competing with the Knicks below them, then I think they will.
It's the Pistons, though. I think the Pistons, the Stan Van Gundy's got a move to make.
Do they make a move, by the way?
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
You think Milwaukee's going to make a trade?
Oh, no. I meant Detroit. I don't know if Milwaukee's going to make a
right,
trade.
because, by the way, Milwaukee's got some assets. Like, people want those players, so you never know. They could do that, too, although they already did the big move with Bledsoe. So, I don't know. But, by the way, that might not have been the right move either. I don't know if Bledsoe ended up being the one. But at the very least, they were able to keep Brogdon, which is the big one. So, that makes it more palatable. But we'll see. But anyway, Dave, awesome stuff. Thank you guys for joining us as well in the live show. Some great questions. And stay tuned on iTunes. We'll have this up as a podcast in a few minutes. And don't forget, sports fans, the B-Ball Breakdown, not a channel, we're a conversation. You in? Are you in, Dave?
Yes, I am.